Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my colleagues in the official opposition for all their hard work throughout the day. I do want to thank the members of other parties as well as we tried to find a resolution to a problem that was created when the government decided to add additional measures to their financial assistance package. As we said last week, we recognize the unprecedented situation that our country finds itself in. Nous reconnaissons le fait que beaucoup des Canadiens et Canadiens vont avoir beaucoup de difficultés dans les jours et les semaines qui viennent et nous sommes prêts à jouer notre part pour trouver les solutions. We recognize that Canadians are going to face a great deal of difficulty in the days and weeks ahead, and we are here ready to help find solutions. That is what we were expecting to do. Now that the government has agreed to our grave concerns about the type of sweeping power that they were going to give themselves, we do find that we are in a position where we are able to support this going ahead. Now, that being said, I do have a number of questions for my colleagues across the aisle. As they will well know, many businesses are on the brink of bankruptcy. Many businesses have been told that they must close their doors. Restaurants, other types of businesses in the service industry, and they are facing a great deal of hardship. The government's original proposal was to provide a 10% wage subsidy. I believe the ministers would acknowledge that the situation has changed from those early days, and that in many cases that will not be sufficient to help individuals stay employed. Will the government consider other additional measures that would keep small businesses afloat during this difficult time? We have called for not only the raising of that wage subsidy, but also to have GST rebated to the small businesses who have collected them over the past few months. That would provide them with a great deal of cash flow that would be able to assist. So will the government be willing to entertain that type of measure?
Before the minister answers that, I'm just going to get one little piece of business taken care of here. If I could get the Sergeant-at-Arms to just come up. Everyone could just stay put. There's no worries. No one's getting evacuated from the house. It's okay. It's my mistake. I believe it was the Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm not upset at the fact that we had to take some of my time away based on the change in the House. The place I'd like to start, of course, is to recognize the nature and the scale of the challenge that we're facing today, and to acknowledge that even with the enormous challenges that Canadians are facing, even with the significant issues that our economy is facing, we still do not know and cannot know the depth and the duration of the challenge that we're facing. And how we must protect ourselves is by ensuring that we together in this House have the capacity to deal with this on behalf of Canadians. So in that regard, I'm obviously pleased that we're moving forward with the legislation proposed today, the legislation that will allow us to, with the oversight of this House as appropriate, to come forward and to make sure that we can protect Canadians in the short term through health measures that are of critical importance, and in the medium term as we think about how we deal with our economic challenges, and more importantly, prepare ourselves for our opportunity to come out of this challenge in a way that will show the strength of Canadians and Canada for today and for tomorrow. We have put forward measures here today that we believe are going to enable us to support Canadians and also to support Canadian businesses. So we think that that is the way we should be moving ourselves forward. We have put forward measures that will, in fact, provide every Canadian who is finding himself or herself away from work because of sickness, quarantine, supporting one of their elderly parents, supporting one of their children who might be away from school due to sickness or just because they're away from school, or importantly, if they're away from work because they can't actually be at work or their employer has asked them to.
Unfortunately, I do have to allow for one more question from the Leader of Opposition. It's 2 minutes. It's the same amount of time that's asked the question. Basically, the Honourable Official Opposition Leader has 1 minute to ask a question.
Okay. Well, I will acknowledge that we are in agreement with much of what the finance minister has said. I think we are heading into some uncharted territory. There will be many Canadians that have never looked to government before for assistance that will now be looking to government. We must make sure that we find a way to provide that support to them, help keep people in their apartments, in their homes, able to put food on the table. One way to ensure that the effects of this downturn last even longer is if the government were, or if our central bank were in any way to consider quantitative easing measures. That is a guaranteed way to make sure that the lingering effects of this downturn will last years and years beyond what it would need to do. So will the finance minister commit to assuring the House that quantitative easing, printing money, is not something that this government would support, certainly not something that the government would request the Bank of Canada to consider?
The Honourable Finance Minister, a brief answer.
Madam Speaker, first of all, if I can continue where I left off, our measure would ensure that every Canadian who is off work for any reason that is meaning that they are not going to be able to have the income that they previously had, and they had income the year before, will be able to get a wage subsidy for them. And that, of course, will be very important in allowing them to deal with the challenge that they're facing. So this is not only providing the employee with support, but it's ensuring that the firm that they work for is able to have the kind of support through those funds. That we see as critically important, and that will allow those firms to have the people off work that need to be off work and the ones that are at work, not at work. With respect to anything to do with the Bank of Canada, I think it's important to note that the Bank of Canada is independent of government and will remain so under this government.